Gentlemen, start your engines. All right. Good evening, everybody. It's about 6:33 p.m. Today is Tuesday, August 21st, 2018. And if you would join us in the pledge, we'd appreciate it.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thanks. Roll call, Randy, please.
Okay, Will, 1 second here.
Yep.
Okay, Trustee Marks is excused and absent this evening. Trustee LaRue.
Here.
Trustee Wiegand.
Here.
Trustee Everson.
Here.
Treasurer Johnson.
Here.
Clerk Rattari is here, and Supervisor Durant.
Here.
Excuse me. Staff present is Manager Gerard, Planner Jason McCarthy, Assessor Dulcie Ranta, Fire Chief Dan Shanahan, and Fire Marshal Rob Cochran. And our attorney, Roger Zappa, is here.
Right. All accounted for. Thank you. Public comment. Anybody wish to address the board or make any comments? Did you folks want to say anything? Or are you just watching?
We were meeting Jim Park here today. Are we here too early?
I don't know.
For the what?
He was reviewing some plans today. Is this the right minute?
I think that's the Planning Commission.
Thanks for asking.
Yes, that's okay. Thanks for coming. We lost our public. And no board member comment, unless somebody wants to comment on that. All right, next up is the consent agenda. Tonight, this consists of the approval of the regular meeting minutes of August 8th. Bills payable in the amount of $412,555.86. And we have a budget amendment that we will read shortly, number 2018-07. Received committee and other reports, the election statistics, Sheriff's report of July, the draft meeting minutes from the Fire Department Business and Officers meetings of August 13th, Fire Chief and Fire Marshal's office report of July, Road Committee approved minutes of June 5th and draft minutes of August 8th, Planning Commission minutes of July 25th, Water Production report of July, Recreation Committee agenda for August 21st, which was just held. I had no supervisor report this time. Correspondence not requiring board action is Charter Communications quarterly franchise fee payment and a State of Michigan notice of hearing for Semco case downstate, financial statement for July. So would you like to read that first and then make the motion, or?
I'll move to accept the consent agenda as presented.
Second.
And then my comment will be for the budget amendment is 2018-07, so that's the 7th one this year. Authorization is requested to reclassify expenditures in the fire fund. Full-time fire chiefs' wages and associate cost will be reflected in the administration, while the wages from the retired fire marshal were in the fire marshal department. The offset will come from the fund balance. So they just shifted some funds around to cover the transition, so.
Okay. Do roll call on this, right?
Yep. Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand?
Yes.
Trustee Everson?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
Supervisor Durant?
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0 and 1 absent.
Okay, then if we could have approval of the rest of the agenda, unless somebody needs to make some changes. Randy?
I'll move to accept the agenda as presented.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Thank you. We are now going to open the public hearing. Get down there. Fast forward. For the fire department millage, and the request, I should say assessment, the request for 2.5 mils. This was the question of whether or not the fire department can manage with 2.5 mils again. And I don't know if I have to do gavel, but we'll open the public hearing at 6:38. And Randy, did you want to read your cover letter?
I don't know that I need to read the whole cover letter. It's for board information. However, there's nobody here for the public hearing, so we'll have to see how far we have to go with it. Basically, what it amounts to is that the Township Board has a special assessment that is intended to fund the operation of the fire department, fire and rescue department, and each year that special assessment requires a public hearing to determine whether or not the 2.5 mils, the 2.5 mils is adequate, too much or too little for the operation of the fire department following the formulation of a very preliminary budget. We have done that. We have completed this afternoon the preliminary budget for the fire department, and based on the information that we have at this point in time, early in the process, 2.5 mils is necessary to be levied to fund the operation of the fire department, and that will leave approximately $7,000 at the end of the year, if all goes as planned, to be applied to the principal of the building loan for the new fire hall. So that is the recommendation from myself and the chief, that the board levy for 2019 the 2.5 mils special assessment.
Okay. Would we expect the fire department to talk at all?
Not necessarily, unless the board has any questions or wishes to.
Okay. Any questions for Randy or the department? Okay, that's all we really had to do, was to kind of give people the opportunity to talk about this, but
So then I think you close the public hearing, and then I think we make a motion to accept that for, would be the next year, Randy?
For 2019 to levy the 2.5 mil special assessment.
and then whatever we do with the budget later, or is this it? It doesn't come up again during the budget?
I don't think you're going to have any issues during the budget process.
It just would have to be determined by the Township Board by September 30th, because that's when we put in our millage for special assessment request to the county. So you should know by then if you're going to have any changes to that request.
September what?
30th.
Okay.
We are not anticipating that there will be any significant change to the preliminary budget. We suspect that the board will be supportive of it. It's not much of a difference from this year, and we have a fair amount of documentation to support it. So I think the 2.5 mils is going to be adequate.
Okay, sounds good. So, we'll gavel again. 6:41, whoops, excuse me. 6:41, the public hearing is closed for the special assessment at the fire department. And then you want to, go ahead, Randy.
I will make a motion that the board, or that we approve the 2.5 special assessment mills for 2019.
Support?
Do we need a roll call
Yes.
for this?
Yeah. Clerk Rattari is yes. Trustee Everson?
Yes?
Trustee LaRue?
Yes.
Trustee Wiegand?
Yes.
Treasurer Johnson?
Yes.
And Supervisor Durant.
Yes.
Motion carries 6-0 and 1 absent.
Next up is 7A, staff reports. Fire department is first. We have our, in the consent agenda, we had a lot of reports from the fire department. I hate to go all the way back, but there were a couple of things come on up, Dan, thanks. Does anybody have any questions for Dan, right off the bat?
Welcome aboard.
On his
Well,
first,
thank you.
his first, or third day of, or second day of.
Second day.
Second day of.
Second day.
Officially.
Manager Gerard might be getting sick of me already, too.
Yeah, you've had lots of meetings.
Yeah, we've gone over quite a bit. Yeah, we've hit the budget pretty hard. And
But
we've
it's-
concurred with pretty much everything. There's been a little going back and forth, but I think we're there. We're pretty close, if not there.
Well, it's budget time too, so
Yeah.
you're working on a lot of that stuff too.
Yeah.
Before you get going though, Chief, I'd just like to commend you and your staff. I think the reports that are given to us are excellent.
Yeah.
It really broke it down, especially on like the ambulance runs now, because you can see that's a big part of our
Yeah.
run volume now, so I hope the public reads that in the packets, so they can see what we're getting as far as runs, and, you know, that ambulance is a big part of it now.
That's what I was gonna point out, was the graph. I love that.
Okay,
And I
yeah,
know Ernie
that's Rob.
likes graphs and charts and stuff. He's asked for stuff before, but that's very telling. 2017 to 2018. And the gray, which is EMS 2018, is way up there. I really like that one.
Yeah, Rob put the graph together, which is, it's nice to make it simple and easy to see and easy to follow versus numbers sometimes. But as you can see, we had 33 EMS out of 40 last month. There's a couple interesting calls, and I happened to be out of town for both of them, was, I'm sure you both, the Presque Isle Rescue, 37 people up there. And you might not have heard about the Dead River. There was during the daytime. I guess that was a lot of manpower was needed that day due to the weather.
The terrain.
Pardon me?
And the terrain.
And the terrain, I heard, yes. I was talking to the sheriff, the township sheriff today, and yeah, he said he worked up quite a sweat that day. We did attend the Ore to Shore, had a good time too. We also did work the Ore to Shore, which is always we always get quite a few guys that do it. It's great for EMS. It's a great training day. And we get to use equipment that we don't get to use too often. So it's a long day, but it's a good day, especially for the training. And really, there's nothing too exciting that happened this month, unless you have any questions reading the reports. I think everything's there that we discuss, and some things we'll be getting with the manager on down the road. And
No, I like the reports. They're good.
yeah, Rob Concord. Also, I did appoint an assistant chief. Okay, I did. Okay, I was sort of waiting for our meeting to announce it. I didn't want them to know first, and I asked Rob Cochran to be the assistant chief, and he accepted, and so
Great.
he's appointed our assistant chief.
Great deal.
So
And
Congratulations.
Congratulations.
Yeah.
Welcome, sort of, to that level. It's different.
yeah, so maybe
Yeah. We don't want to scare them too soon.
No,
you
not
know.
too soon. Trying that too.
He's
Our,
still sitting there.
Yeah, he came.
Our intention is at your next meeting
was
to
just
have
gonna
the
say.
formal introductions and presentation of the chief and the assistant chief.
We'll do badges next month, or next meeting, which is next month. Yep, September 4th. So bring your cameras if you want, and we'll make it official.
Okay.
I like that. Anything else for the guys? Or the department?
Easy.
Great,
Okay,
thank
thanks.
you.
Have a good night.
You're welcome to stay.
Okay, just wanted to make a note, sorry. Public Works, Kirk's not here. We're gonna be talking about his department a little bit later. We can set that off to the side. Delcy, we're gonna talk assessing. Get down there. She's got some handouts that she put in your mailbox.
Hello, everyone.
You've heard me mention a couple times about some of the things that are going on in assessing world, and I've kind of waited a little bit so Delcy can explain it much better than I, but there was a conference in the meantime downstate trying to pull some of the assessors together, and I'm sure they talked long and hard about some of the changes that are recommended, and Dulcie did a compilation of not only the handout for the PowerPoint, but some of the comments that were made besides. She said she didn't speak at the conference, but everybody said before what was going on, and it was pretty much all the same old, but the impact to the department, or to the township, is not gonna be too favorable if everything goes the way it is. So Dulcie, you can explain it better than
The
I.
second part of the handout, the first 4 pages were actually notes that were taken by 2 of my colleagues. Joe Porterfield from one of the counties downstate, he's an equalization director, and Pamela Chipman from Mackinac County Equalization. And I wanted to include it because it gives a real good synopsis of the representation that was at this meeting in Gaylord on August 14th. We had about 120 to 140 members of communities show up to discuss this reform bill with Treasurer Curry and Senator Jim Stamus was there. And as well as Heather Frick, the State Tax Commission's executive director. And the reason why this was so important, there was levels of, you had local unit assessors, you had township supervisors, you had township board members, you had township managers there, you had county equalization, and they were all able to provide at their levels of local government to county government and how it would impact if this reform went through as passed. Now, one of the biggest concerns, and the reason I was there in case there was no other representation from the Upper Peninsula, but we were fortunate that Sue Bovan, the UP Assessors Association's treasurer and secretary, put in her card ahead of time and was able to make comment on behalf of the entire Upper Peninsula Assessors Association. That really drove home the concerns about the cost that could be impacted at the local unit if you didn't have some of the standards that were in the reform, the way it was written, that you would have to have those 5,000 parcels, or you would have to have a tax roll that generated $12 million in order to keep your assessing function at the local township. So with her providing her comment saying, you know, we have real concerns, the area, the population, and the fact that you may hit your 5,000 parcels, but you have to keep in consideration that a lot of them could be tax exempt. They could be federally owned, state-owned, DNR parcels. They could be commercial forest reserve parcels where they're not paying ad valorem. So even if you hit the 5,000 parcels, you're not generating the same amount of tax dollars to get to the $12 million tax roll. So the way the reform was written and has been presented to our state is that you could maybe qualify for some waivers where you would maybe, if you didn't hit the 5,000 parcels or have the $12 million, they may provide you a waiver if you had a level 3 or a level 4 assessor of record and you were meeting all the quality standards that are set forth by the state. Those standards are what are measured by the AMAR. So there's been some question as to what's driving this reform, because there's not an assessor, I don't believe, in the state that doesn't agree that we need equality and a set of standards, that they have to be uniform and have to be clear and concise as to what our objectives are as assessors to be able to meet those quality and standards and to stay in good graces or to have the passing scores on the AMAR so we don't run the risk of having to have corrective action plans or have our assessment role assumed if we're considered deficient and we're refusing to work with the state to bring our records into compliance. So some of the areas, that was one of the big areas, was the parcel count and the tax roll that's not generating the $12 million. Because if the reform went through the way it is currently written, it would indicate that, let's use Marquette Township. We have about 2,700 parcels and our tax roll generates just shy of $8 million. That we would be needing to either partner with another municipality or, you know, apply for a waiver. And if we weren't successful in obtaining that waiver, then we would be looking at, do we then have the county take over our assessing function? And if that were the case, then you're looking at taking 80% of your 1% admin fee and giving it to the county to cover our costs for them doing local unit assessing. Well, what if you're in a community that's much smaller and doesn't have our commercial district or our active housing market? And if you were in a community the size of Marquette Township or Ternary area, where they have a contract assessor that is nowhere near costing them that 1% admin fee that they use for their general fund to provide other services for parks or to cover other costs that their millage, their general operating millage doesn't quite cover. With this reform, if it went through, in a smaller community, and we all know in the Upper Peninsula there's a lot of communities that would be subject to this, it would actually cost them more because 80% of that 1% admin fee would now go to another place for providing your assessing services. And it's even written that if you didn't levy the 1%, you would have to find the equivalent of 80% of that 1%. So I mean, there's a lot of different areas on the reform that could cause some issues. One of the other areas that had a lot of conversation at the meeting was the fact that elected supervisors, if you're certified as an assessing official, that you wouldn't be able to be the assessor of record anymore. So that was an area that had a lot of concern because there was a few assessors that were also the elected supervisors that were saying, wait a minute, you're taking away part of my livelihood that I wouldn't be able to, I'd have to choose. Am I going to be your assessor of record or am I going to be the elected official as your supervisor? So there was a lot of discussion as to how that could maybe be removed from the reform bill. And I believe the gentleman that was sponsoring the bill, in this case it was Stamus, was talking about looking at some of the concerns and trying to either rewrite it or to make it clear as to what their expectations were. One of the other areas that had real concern would be eliminating, we refer to it, the prior levels were either you were a 1, 2, 3, or 4. When they rewrote the levels, it's now the 1-2 level is now your MCAO, which is your Michigan Certified Assessing Officer. That is the level that Janelle is at. Then you have the former level 3, which is the Michigan Advanced Assessing Officer, which Marquette Township requires due to our SCV on our commercial and industrial classifications. Then you have the level 4, which is the highest level of certification in the state of Michigan, which is the Michigan Master Assessing Officer. So the way the reform is reading is if you are an MCAO, a former level 1, level 2 assessor, that you would no longer be able to assign an assessment role or be the assessor of record. That's not to say you wouldn't still be really important to the office because you're going to need the technical support, you're going to need the clerical support. It's just you can no longer be the assessor of record the way the reform is currently written. They would be requesting, or in the reform wanting it passed, that you'd have to be at least a level 3 or a level 4. Well, that can really cause some local units to pay a lot more if previously you only needed a level 2 because you were primarily a residential or agricultural community or timber cutover, that now you'd be looking to pay for the assessing services of a level 3 or level 4, which typically costs more for that person to come in and to fill that responsibility as your assessor of record. So there's areas, and it was a very vocal group that attended in Gaylord, and they weren't shy. They weren't intimidated with the fact that it was the sponsor of the bill or the treasurer himself sitting there. They were very vocal and were pointing out a lot of things, saying, not everything's bad. You're looking at the fact less than 1% of the assessment rolls since the AMAR has went through have been seized by the State Tax Commission. That's a pretty good standard when you're looking at all the municipalities as a whole. So they were making a lot of excellent points, saying that, it's not failing to the point that it requires this much reform. So it'll be real interesting when the next draft comes out after all of the comments. And there's 2 more meetings that'll be taking place at the end of the month. And I was talking with Supervisor Drant earlier today, and I just couldn't remember the locations, but I know it's in the southeastern portion of the state, and there's one in the southwestern part. That'll be taking place, I believe, on Tuesday the 28th would be the next round of meetings for that. But I just wanted to take a moment here real quick and explain to you what these first 4 sheets are. And this was just a real clear synopsis of the comments that were made by some of my colleagues, and a lot of county equalization was actually there to explain that it was going to create a financial hardship for the counties as well, because they would have to supply staff, they would have to provide equipment and office space for anybody if they took on any more of the local units assessing. So it was really interesting to hear some of the comments. I just wanted to find one real quick here, and I apologize. There was one comment that I thought was of the most interest. Several indicated these changes will do nothing to reduce the number of appeals unless commercial and industrial taxpayers were again required to attend the local board of review. That's important, because right now, the way the statute's written, that if you're a commercial or industrial property and you don't agree with the assessor's value at March Board of Review, you don't have to come through the local Board of Review anymore. You can go immediately to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. So one of the areas that we are all trying to get our points across is, that's fine if you want to have your Board of Review trained more and want to have them more qualified to be able to hear the different types of appeals, then you need to require all property owners to go through the local unit before they can bypass you and go right to the Michigan Tax Tribunal. Because what we're finding is a lot of our appeals that end up at the tax tribunal could be a difference of opinion, and if you explain it, they're not going to agree 100%, and we're probably not going to agree 100%, but we can come to a point that can be based on fact that could avoid a lot of municipalities' costs when that ends up just being filed immediately to the tribunal. But there was a comment here that they mentioned that the retired Judge Lasher had actually publicly made the comment at the Michigan Assessors Association Board that the appeals are down by so much that they're worried about having the revenues to fund the tax tribunal. So if we're having so much issues as to us being inadequate as assessors in needing this reform, then why are those numbers down so much? That doesn't mean we're all doing a bad job. So that's why we're trying to get a lot of local municipalities to do reform resolutions or to ask questions of our legislators saying, what is the reason for this suggestion? So when you have time, if you wish to read the comments, and I'm in my office, if you want clarification or want any additional information, I'd be more than happy to try to get that for you. But I just wanted to show you this is the most recent up-to-date information we have on it.
Girls, can you give us just, I'm thinking there's about 5 points that we've talked about how it's going to affect the township. Board of Review is a good one to start with even.
Yeah, Board of Review, the
that's
way the
structured.
reform is written, it would require if you're not able to have the assessor of record in your local unit, then you would be relying on a district or regional Board of Review. So if we didn't qualify for the waiver and we applied for the waiver and we're denied, then we're going to team up with another municipality to try to form our own assessing district. Now, how that would work then is if you didn't, you could either still retain a local Board of Review, but if you then go to where you're having more of a regional, then you're relying on a board that's been created that you may not have a representative from Marquette Township on that Board of Review. You start to lose local control and local trust and local input when you're dealing with taxpayers that live, own property, do business in Marquette Township. They want to know that if they come into this office, they're dealing with the people they're going to have to get answers from or have it explained to them on the process. Board of Review, these are people that are stakeholders in our township as well. They also own property. They also reside here. They're also doing business in the township. When you start to take away that local feel and that local control, I think that's where you're starting to open yourself up for lack of trust or lack of feeling that you're being heard if it's not being handled all within your municipality. So that's one of the big concerns that has come out for your Board of Review. What if we had a regional Board of Review and you had property here in Marquette Township and you had property in Scandia Township? How are you going to find somebody that's going to have the pulse of what's happening in our market to be able to properly say, nope, I believe your assessment in Scandia is correct, or your property should be more in line with Marquette Township? You have to have people that are familiar with the area to be able to give you an honest, independent, this is what we feel your property is worth if you come in and appeal. So that's one area. Another area would be the cost to the municipality. How is it going to work if we didn't qualify for the waiver and we had to team up, let's say Chocolate. Chocolate Township would be in the same situation. They don't meet the parcel count, their tax roll doesn't generate the tax dollars. So then we'd be looking at forming our own assessing district. How is that going to look? Who's going to be your assessor of record? Who's going to pay the fees for who's covering what? Where are they going to sit? If I were fortunate enough to be the assessor of record, am I then going out there to do field work? Am I going to have their database here in this office, in that scenario, to be able to answer questions? Or would that person stay as an employee at Chocolate Township? We'd stay Marquette Township, and we'd be negotiating some way for there to be that piece, so we could say we have the assessors of record that are necessary to meet the requirements. What if you're in another area where you don't, how are you geographically going to cover that large of a square mile area to meet that requirement with one person? Now you're looking as a township saying, okay, now we're going to have to hire an additional staff, get them loaded with equipment. I mean, it's going to just, and it's not just a staff member. It's not just saying, this is what the market is, this is what we're paying. Now you're looking at benefits, you're looking at, it becomes quite expensive to start adding staff.
Besides the training, too.
Besides the training as well. That's another area. That was one of the biggest things, because right now the IAAO, which stands for International Assessing Association officers, they're saying that for every 4,300 parcels, you should have a full-time staff member. So if you start getting into areas where you're taking on, like, let's talk about Marquette County. They're doing some local unit assessing. If for some reason we said we don't want to do it locally and we say, go ahead, county, now we just turned over how many more parcels to them? Where are they going to staff people? Where are they going to put them in the courthouse? I mean, it's not just here at township level. You're going to have areas of the state that are going to say, you know what, we don't even want to deal with it. County, you take it on. Well, then how's the county going to fund it? Where are they going to put the people? I mean, it just kind of at every level, you're going to have stumbling blocks. I'm not saying that they're all bad things to the reform. I'm just saying that there's enough there that caused me great concern as to how it would be implemented and what it's going to look like. And at the end of the day, what's the impact going to be to our residents? That's who ultimately we're accountable to.
And they don't understand. I mean, as
No.
a normal resident, I have no clue. When I get that statement in February or January, whenever that comes out, and it talks about the board of review, and it's like, what the heck is this? I have no idea what this is as a taxpayer or a business owner. They don't know what that means. They can come in March and talk about their property if they have boundaries, and I mean, there's a list of things that they can go on. I don't want to misspeak as to what's not allowed.
Sure.
But they may have assessment issues with the value of their property or the size of it. I mean, some of it doesn't fall under the assessing department.
But that's usually the first point of reference, where if they're going to come in, they know if it's not something that could be addressed by our assessing department, if it's something to do with zoning, they know I can say, well, you need to speak to our staff planner or our zoning administrator, or I have a question about where my grinder pump sits. Is that on my property? We can ask Kirk. It's usually, that's usually what starts the conversation, is when they come in. A lot of times, a lot of those conversations will actually start after they receive their July bill, because that's the first time. When they don't understand what's on the paper that they get in February, they sure want to know when they get their tax bill and see the difference in taxes. And that a lot of times will start that conversation as well. So if you're not doing it at the local level, now you're relying on somewhere else to be providing that information.
So I don't know if this is clear as mud or not. We talked about it a little bit. If the AMAR was put in place 4 or 5 years ago, roughly?
5 years ago. We're on the second round starting up.
That's right, with the 20%.
Yep.
And if you remember some of the reports that we got, in the beginning, Dulcie was putting out fires with trying to catch up with what had happened previously and finding things and moving this and redoing that. And we got a great report. She did a good amount of work and a good job, and Janelle too, I'm sure, helped.
Oh, yes.
To get it in line, and the next review was good, and the next one, and it's just, so what I kept asking her when I found out about this is, why are they changing this? The system is working. For a new system, to be able to have that kind of results and get everybody lined up, and like she said, 1% of the whole state is having an issue. Throw the baby out with the bathwater. It's just ridiculous.
There was a couple of really interesting comments from some of the other members present that instead of making this much reform at the local level, maybe they should use some of that money to hire more staff at the state level. So more of these reviews could take place on a more regular basis to make sure that everybody's in compliance. And they even went so far as to say, instead of us all having to go to Lansing, get some more regional offices that can provide the same services. So, some were there to be very vocal and to show their anger and to show that they were just really disgusted. And then you had the others that were there just to point out the facts as to why they had issues with it. So, I mean, it was a big blend of participants, I'll say that. So this is why, sorry, Dan.
Oh, go ahead.
But this is why, to kind of segue into why I was following up from last meeting on the resolutions that I had provided to you and was going to ask for your support to have them made for Marquette Township, is part of the AMAR. So we want to keep our quality and standards and to make sure that we meet all the requirements of the next round of AMAR. And that was part of it. You know, everything kind of goes hand in hand.
Or do you think there's a chance that they're going to listen?
You know, in my opinion, you know, again, I guess I've been doing this long enough that I guess I'm a little cynical or a little jaded, but I think that there will be something, in my opinion, but I don't think it'll be quite as what it's written, because they were getting a lot of feedback, and they even made the comment that, yes, we realize that's an area we need to revisit, and I'm sure there's another draft that's ready to come out that will have a lot of the language that they found just was not going to be acceptable, has been removed, but until we know that, you know, the biggest concern, our legislative liaison for the Michigan Assessors Association, you know, he was at our annual meeting, and he just said, you know, his biggest concern is after the general election and until they're sworn in on the 20th, the lame duck, you know, that 2 weeks where you're just wondering what's going to come through, that was his main concern. You know, he doesn't think it would pass the way it's written, but I mean, we'll find out. Yeah, Pete?
The 2 meetings left are August 28th at Gaines's Township and 29th in Novi.
Okay.
But where do you land? Where's your level? You are a master?
I'm a 4. I'm a master.
You're a master.
The township didn't require that of me. I just made it a personal goal, so I went and did it on my own. I'm glad I did now, but
Yeah.
at the
I'm just
time.
imagine that you're sitting there and the frustration because you weren't allowed to say anything.
Well, no, here was the other thing too. I was ready to say something if our questions weren't all brought up, but then there's another thing where it's like, you know, you gotta quit kicking the dead horse. If everything's already been said, it loses its impact when everybody keeps just kind of hitting the same things, you know, people quit listening. So that's why I didn't get up and add anything, because all of my points that I would have brought up were addressed either by Sue Bovan or by a couple of the other members that were there from downstairs, so.
You know, actually, the ones that would be the most upset, Pete, would be like a level 2 or even a level 3, because they've worked and worked and worked thinking that this is what they need to do their job, and that's their career or whatever they've planned, and now it's not enough. Or maybe you're a 1 or a 2, and in your community, that's all you need. Now they need to be a 3 or a 4, you know?
Or to find the level 3 or the level 4, saying, you know what, I'll provide you the technical and clerical support. I mean, those people are still going to be needed. There's only 149 master level assessors in the state of Michigan. And Sue Bovan just mentioned that one of them in the UP is retiring, and there was another one, so that would leave me for the entire Upper Peninsula. I mean, we're hurting. I mean, there's a lot of level 3s, which, you know, if we get the waiver, I can't see that they wouldn't provide the waiver. I mean, you're expecting, it just wouldn't work. I mean, but you still need your technicians, you still need your level 2s. You need all of that in order to be able to do your job. It's just now, how are you going to attract new people to come into the profession? Because when we were sitting there in the office, or in that meeting, Janelle and I and a lady from Gogebic County were sitting there, and we were looking around, and we were young by like 15 to 20 years on the average age that was there. And I'm in my mid-40s. So when you start looking at the age and how quickly they're starting to retire, we're not getting enough people interested in becoming assessors to get the education to get certified to replace them. We're going to be hurting in the next, I've said it how many times, the next 3 to 5 years. Especially those that maybe didn't do so well in the AMAR are going to say, you know what, I'm done. I'm out of here. I don't even want to deal with it. That's what's got me concerned.
Well, you did a good job at the conference.
Oh, thank you.
To all the ones who were there, so.
I think we're lucky to have you and your
Thank you.
staff.
Yeah, I couldn't do my job without Janelle. She's a real asset. I showed, sorry, Lynn, I just brain dumped your name there for a second. The supervisor, the sketches she's doing and how, you know, it just makes our records look so much more crisp and clean and accurate. She's been doing a really good job.
The group that was there when you were there, more or less from the UP and the northern part of lower Michigan?
Primarily lower part of, upper part of lower Michigan. There was only maybe 3 of us that were there from the Upper Peninsula.
So I'm looking at the 2 additional meetings coming up from downstate. There may be a more vocal down there.
I would imagine.
Knowing those people down there.
I would imagine. It would, I mean, that was one thing they were really surprised, but at the number of people that actually came, because they only had it set up for 70, and they had to haul in more chairs, and it was standing room along the sides, along the back, and it spilled into the hallway.
But that looks better. I mean, if you had it in a huge hall and only 100 people showed up, then
I was joking, because the only thing missing was our flaming pitchforks, but it wasn't to that point of being quite that.
Do you think their timing on that conference, or was, you had other meetings going on, they probably thought everybody's gonna go there, nobody's gonna come to this?
That was a comment that was brought up quite a bit, but I don't know.
No,
That's
it's-
just all.
It's
Well,
not a,
it sure
co-
sounds like that was intentional.
yeah, it's not a coincidence that the
No.
2 remaining ones that are being scheduled are scheduled at the same time as the training sessions.
Yes.
Well,
is there anything we can do? I mean, short of the resolution,
just talk to your legislators. If you look on the last MTA notes that came out, they actually had a link that if you click on it, there's some talking points that you can actually use if you want to talk to the legislators that represent the Upper Peninsula. At this point, you should be talking to them all, not even the ones that just specifically represent Marquette. You should be reaching out to all of them.
I did talk to Sarah Cambenzi immediately as soon as I found out about this, and that was kind of what triggered the idea of her coming to the last meeting that we postponed is all. She just wanted to wait till after the election, but she said they're working, and I did get an update from her staff too. Must have been last week. It said the same thing. They're still working on it. They didn't forget. They're pushing against it, I guess.
And as I get more updates, I'll make sure I send out the emails. It's just this came in, being out of the office the last week, I just was going through sorting, and that's where I found the notes and the updated list breakdown from those other 2 colleagues that I attached. So at least you had an idea of what was being said.
Well, they started out with draft 4, I think.
We're at 5 now.
So they had this planned somehow.
Yeah,
Yeah, the first time it became public was draft number 4.
yep.
If you want to send a comment, you can send it to Judy Allen, at the michigantownship.org. It's in your Insight magazine, or the,
Yeah, they came out on Friday.
yeah.
Yep.
Anything else for Dulcie?
Do you have any questions on the resolutions that I gave you guys for the last meeting? Any questions on that? That was just to fulfill our requirements for the next round of AMAR. I just wanted to be proactive instead of waiting until after the AMAR, because I really don't want to have to go through any corrective actions.
I did tell him a little bit of what it was for, but I didn't realize it was for the AMAR,
Yeah.
so that's good.
And a real quick update, this has to do with Treasury, not the assessing department, but as you know, we had letters written up for some of our delinquent personal property taxpayers. And since then, we have a payment plan with one of the properties, so they're making a real effort to get current. And we just received 2 years of payments on another one that had the longest history of delinquency. So we're getting those cleaned up as well. Ernie's been after me, so he made sure that we got the information to Roger Zappa, and the letters went out, and they've been effective, so.
The other thing the board asked about too was a list of the tribunal. So if you just want to email it to them, or we can put it in the next packet.
The only one that has come through that would be a new one for 2018 was JKT, the theater. The ones that we haven't settled from 17 would just continue into 18, so that's not changeless, but I will get you an updated one. But as for brand new first appeal we're hearing, it was the movie theater.
And you had already talked to them once, right?
A couple years ago, yes. Sat down with them and we went through everything.
And made some
I can tell you that we have a true cash value of a little over 4 million, and they're wanting the true cash reduced to 2 million, which means their assessed and taxable would be 1 million. And they paid over just under half of that for the land only, so it could be interesting.
Okay, we're good? Thanks.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Good update.
Thank you.
Thank you. Roger, you're up with our attorney's report.
Well, it's been a fairly busy month, as usual. A fair amount of time has been spent in meetings with the prospective purchaser of the 30-acre parcel who has easement rights over the Wellfield Road. The objective of those is to just get on the same page of what the township finds important in terms of a maintenance agreement and shared use of that road. There's no question that the prospective purchaser, whoever owns that 30-acre parcel, has easement rights for ingress, egress, and utilities and so forth. But the terms of what that'll look like and where the entrance points will be, it will probably require relocation of gates for security purposes and so forth. And we met most recently actually on the site on Friday afternoon. So the next step will be to try to put together a draft of a maintenance agreement, at least the key points of who will be responsible for what over the course of the years. And that, of course, would have to be brought before the full board and approved or denied and fine-tuned. At the last meeting, the board requested an interpretation on the ballot language for the road millage. So I took a look at that. The question arose as to whether, if there is enough funding, can any of that millage be used for roads that were not necessarily included within the rehabilitation, the local roads rehabilitation schedule that the township board adopted and that the road committee put together. The ballot language was intentionally worded fairly broadly. So while, and I brought that with me here, but it was for the purpose of repairing, maintaining, and improving local roads designated in the Marquette Township Local Roads Rehabilitation Schedule adopted by the Marquette Township Board, and other road repair, maintenance, and improvements within the township as prioritized by the Marquette Township Board. That was intentional because given the number of years that the whole road rehabilitation project was to take place over, no one has a crystal ball to know what things might crop up, what things might need doing sooner than anticipated in the original schedule, what things might hold up really well and not need to be addressed at all, so you needed to have that flexibility. And that language was very similar to what was used when we adopted or passed the Werner Street road millage before that. But in any event, that's only the first portion of the question, because that answer presumes that there would be any money available to use for other purposes. So that's more of a budgeting question, and I don't have that answer, I don't have that crystal ball, but just from a legal perspective, can that money from the millage be utilized for things that are not specifically listed on the local roads rehabilitation schedule? The answer is yes, as long as it's road maintenance and improvement on roads within the jurisdiction of the township.
Great answer, good.
We also received notification that the Board of Light and Power was advocating for a City of Marquette charter amendment. And I attended that city commission meeting a couple of weeks ago to take a look at what that will entail. It's not entirely clear from the information we have how that will affect the PILT, the payment in lieu of taxes, that's being made by the Board of Light and Power to the city. Depending on how that sorts out, it could ultimately affect the rates that the outlying townships are paying for the utilities, or it may not. We've been reassured by personnel from the Board of Light and Power that it would not have that impact. However, I had requested additional information in order to allow us to make that determination on our own. And I just sent a letter within the last couple of days, again, requesting that because I haven't received a response for that. But that's going to require some additional monitoring to just see how that payment in lieu of taxes, which the PILT will change. The question is whether that will impact the rates of those 6 townships that are part of the Utility Review Commission that was formed in response to the Michigan Supreme Court case that addressed and challenged the Board of Light and Power rates in the 1980s. I've also worked on one interesting land division issue that's kind of still ongoing. We don't have an answer on how that's going to be resolved just yet, involving some boundary issues in a site condominium. The assessor and I have had some communications back and forth with another tax tribunal matter involving the Westwood Mall, and in terms of just taking a look at strategies and so forth in that one. We've also spent a fair amount of time with the company that has bought out the cellular tower lease on the Cox Street water tank property. That company is looking to amend the lease to have more space, more physical space, to add equipment and a generator on the premises, and to clarify some easements. They have in the past had easements from the Cox Street direction, but have typically always used the Vandenboom direction to get there. So assuming that isn't a problem, and we've clarified that it isn't a problem, they may as well just have the legal easement right to go across the piece of property they've been using for the last several years anyway, and to also fine-tune some of the legal descriptions for the easements that they will also be retaining from the other direction because of the geography and the topography and the rock formation. It wasn't possible to actually put the utilities within the legal description of the easement that had been granted in the past. They had to put some bends and detours in those a little bit. So that, I believe we are very close to having a final draft of things that are acceptable to both sides. Kirk has been working on that to negotiate what the actual rate increase will be on a month-to-month basis. Because we have a lease that we negotiated a couple of providers ago. These leases typically get transferred from company to company. But Marquette Township's lease has a provision not found in very many that allows us, anytime that new equipment is added, not just more square footage being rented, but new equipment added on the tower, for example, that we have the right to increase our rental fee. They would very much like to negotiate that out. We also, just as of today or yesterday, received a very interesting FOIA request that I'm working with the clerk on, involving requests for ballots from the November 2016 general election, and the extent to which those are producible or not producible, and we're working on our response for that. And we've just invoked the automatic extension. Those are some of the highlights. There have been some other issues, I'm sure, as well, but those are the main ones in the last 2 weeks.
Quite a bit. You'd think that you didn't have any other clients but us. Ernie?
I just have a question on the entrance to that property over by the well. That road is the only entrance to that property at this point in time?
Correct.
It is, and when we purchased the adjacent property, the owner expressly reserved access rights across our parcel.
It doesn't make it a public road, it's still a private road, private access that they have two access points to.
They could put their own road if they so choose.
On their 30 acres, they could, but only 2 connection points to our road.
And they don't have frontage on any public road.
It's a very difficult site, I guess, would be a very simplified description. It's going to be interesting to see how they develop it.
Anything else for Roger? Thank you. It was very informative. All right. 8A is consider results of Planning Commission 2018 Community Survey. Jason's been so patient.
Good evening. First of all, I want to give Planner Peterson kudos. And if I told him today if I could give him a Navy Star for this survey, I would. He did a fine job on it, and what you have in front of you is the final results for the survey. So we sent this out in June or late June, and we distributed it to 750 households. And we received 145 surveys back. I'm sorry, 248 surveys back, and 145 was our goal. So we have a very high level of confidence at 95% with a precision of about plus or minus 6%. So a fairly accurate depiction of what the public opinion is regarding the subject matter in the survey. And to save the public who is viewing these, I'm going to go to the graphs in case they may want to look at them. But I'm going to go over with you just a brief overview of the questions themselves. So question number 1, the most important issues facing Marquette Township. The top 3 issues indicated by residents were maintaining a low tax rate, of course. I think if you put that, I don't know, I think everybody would have said yes to that at some point on any survey in any community, and maybe next time we won't have that as an option, make them a little bit more difficult to choose an answer. Managing future growth was second, and Parks, Recreation, Open Space came in at a distant third place at 9%. So rental housing availability, oddly enough, and population growth were indicated as least important. Obviously, you want to attract people to your community, so that makes sense. And rental housing availability in a community that you have 90% of people who own homes, that kind of makes sense as well. Satisfaction of Marquette Township services. Overall customer service to township employees was at 86%. Quality of fire services at 87%, which is fantastic. And the same for garbage collection. Let's see. Overall effectiveness of traffic and congestion management was at 50%, and the least satisfactory. I'm hoping that with next year's, in 2021's MDOT projects, that number would go up if asked again on a future survey. We are obviously being very responsive to that very result with our MDOT projects that are coming up in the next several years. Most important actions Marquette Township can make based on the results. Improving snow plowing was still up there on the top 3, so something for us to shoot for as we move forward. Improving fire and police protections came in second and third respectively. I'm assuming with the fire protection that had to do with maintaining apparatus, not so much with the level of service, because all we ever hear about our fire department is how top-notch they are. Let's see, maximum millage increase that, oops. Maximum millage increase respondents would invest in. 72% of respondents said that they would be in favor of a millage that they supported in some fashion, whether it be a 1% or half mil for making township improvements. The next question, supporting and maintaining current fire services. 55% were supportive of that. Supportage of a millage dedicated to the future replacement of fire department apparatus. Really you can add the 51% indicated support of a half mil investment, and 15% indicated support of a 1.5 to 2 mil investment. So really 66% of residents were in favor of support of some kind of millage to support the fire department's improved apparatus. Moving on to page 5, it's support of township pursuing land acquisition opportunities. 58% of respondents indicated that they were either very supportive or somewhat supportive of us pursuing land deals that would benefit open space, recreation, et cetera, whether that have to be property in the Heartwood Forest area or perhaps new neighborhood type parks where and when feasible. So please note that as you work on your budget process. And of course, as with any community, I suspect 74% of people were supportive of Marquette Township pursuing shared services. We've talked about that with the Recreation Authority feasibility study that we did, of which the township was supportive. Chocolate Township was supportive. The city had some cold feet about that because I think that they wanted to have some more things included into that Recreation Authority kind of vision. But I still think we should pursue, at the very least, trails and perhaps some ball field sharing of services with chalk and maintenance, maybe sometime down the future or down the road, something to work on. Interesting question regarding the future growth within the community. Commercial and retail growth was the most desired land use indicated by respondents at 31%, while 28% noted residential was desirable. And another 28% indicated parks and recreation growth. Industrial manufacturing at 13% was the least desirable. I wonder if we had changed that to high-tech industry and research and development, if that would have changed people's viewpoints. I think when you think of the connotation of industrial manufacturing, it kind of has a dirty tinge to it. But I think R&D and at least high-tech industry is what we'd like to attract, sustainable jobs that help to advance the community and the tax base, more so than perhaps a retail store that may be a 10 or 20-year thing or less in some cases, unfortunately. But I think high-tech and R&D are something that we should be utilizing. So those are the highlights from the survey. This is going to be used by the Planning Commission as they draft their master plan, but really this information is a great tool to have in your toolbox as a board member, as a committee member, as a planning commissioner, or anybody in the leadership role, because you have the public telling you what they think about how you're doing and what you're doing right before you, in front of your eyes on a hard copy. So less having people come to an open house and talk about it, which we're going to do at the Planning Commission level in September with a master plan open house. This is great information to use, and sort of the goals and objectives in our action plan for the master plan will reflect some of these things, and then you'll have the opportunity, of course, to review that and provide comment or amendments to it. But some things didn't change, some things did. I think the amount of development that we've had escalated the traffic and congestion issues, but we're hoping that the projects that we have coming up with MDOT will alleviate some of those concerns. And I also thought the future growth questions were interesting and telling too. So if you have any questions for either of us, Isaac's not here, but you're more than welcome to contact him at any time. But I thought he did a great job, and we saved ourselves a whole boatload of money by doing this in-house. This survey cost us $10,000 last time we did it, and I think Isaac's well under that budget. So
Well, if you look at the 2011 one that we did, that you're referring to, roads was the number one in all the categories, that's what people wanted. So we jumped on that, took care of it, and parks and rec and open space was the second, if I remember right. And we jumped on that, you know, we did a lot, the rec committee and you and Springer was all about the parks, and we fixed up Schwimwood. Look, Lions Field is awesome. We're trying to do what the public wants, so keeping taxes down is great for me too, and we can look at the future growth and parks and keep going. I mean, that's what they want us to do. This is what we're looking at and looking for.
Jason, how long, a report like this, how long before you do another one? In, as far as the planning world, what do they suggest, you know?
Every 3 to 5 years, and here in the state of Michigan, your master plan is required to be updated every 5 years by state statute, so this is right in line with that.
So in 5 years, we should do another one.
With technology now, if you ever wanted to do a straw poll on social media or otherwise, you could easily do that if there was a question or an issue that came up that the board wanted to address or find out more information about.
Thank you.
Ernie?
I think going through this, there's lots of information going back in previous ones we've done and how they really compare back and forth. But I always like to look at what the indications of what their other people or other items that they've talked about, like other issues and other actions that they're looking for. I think they're interesting to look at and see, can we address any of them in the short term or in the long term? Some of them we may not be able to do anything to in that. So it's something to look at. Because the minute you ask people their thoughts, you never know what you're gonna come off the wall. And that's what you're looking at all the time. So,
Yeah, there was some interesting, I'm glad he included these because people did write in other things in the questions that had the line for other things. So limiting commercial development, sand cleanup after winter, work within your budget, sidewalks, less commercial development, motorized trails, getting rid of junk cars. So those are all triggers to my department on things that we can focus on and do better, not just for the master plan update, but just for day-to-day activities.
Some of these are I thought were kind of strange because it tells us, the public doesn't really understand some of these things, that we are either working on them or we don't know that they have an issue with it. What is the issue? You know, they're talking about even the fire department. It's like, if you want an improvement, what are you talking about? You know, so that's unfortunate that we don't know some of those answers, but.
One of the questions had to deal with increased maintenance of parks. Now, that's something that we've been talking about at the rec committee level, planning level, and the board level as far as budgeting goes on, you know, how do we take care of these assets that we've been developing? I don't think that that's necessarily a question for the public to answer. I think that that's a policy issue that the board needs to, you know, realize and move forward with, and I know that the manager's been working on it too. But yeah, we've been investing in our parks. We want to make sure that now we have these great parks and they're developed and enhanced with great amenities, that we continue to maintain them in the future so we don't, A, fall in default on our grants that we received, but two, so that the public continues to enjoy them and they don't end up like they did back, you know, when I was graduating high school and Lions Field looked the way it did. I mean, it's a far cry from, you know, when I grew up over there, and it's only going to get better, so. So that question I thought was really interesting. Just that scored really low on the level of importance, but at the staff level and at the board level, that should be a relatively high importance because you have to protect your assets, regardless of whether they're roads or park infrastructure, pipes in the ground, et cetera.
One of the items coming up, and it came up several times, about leach pickup, and that's coming up in this fall. Now, maybe we can, I know Randy was, our manager was working on a spot for it. Maybe we can find something and take care of some of their interests that they'd like to see us do a better job at.
Yeah, I think for the first time in a long time at the rec committee level, we've had people coming in desiring different land uses or different activities that we don't currently feature that we could probably feature for not a very large outlay.
Anything else for Jason? Great.
No,
Thank you.
Done very well.
Yep, thank you.
A lot of information we can look at here now.
Mm-hmm. 8B is consider DEQ water supply evaluation. We don't have Kirk here. So this is just for consideration, Randy? We don't need to actually take.
No, it's basically for your information. It's a report. It's not a water quality report. This is a system report, system-wide report that the DEQ comes in and evaluates all of the systems involved with the acquisition, treatment, and distribution of the water. The water quality report itself you saw earlier in the year, which is always very high. We rank very high and several times have been judged to be the best water in the UP in competition with other municipal water supplies in the UP. So, and again, this, you know, the last line on the first page basically sums it up. You know, it basically says, overall, we found the township water system is well-run and well-maintained. They were impressed with the high quality of qualifications and certifications that our staff have for a small staff, and really found no issues. The only issue in the last year that was found is one day on one occasion the water quality sample. We do a daily sample, and one day that sample was late. So we got a notice on that. But we don't do the sample here. We take the sample here and send it in for analysis and testing. So that's a daily thing that we do.
Meticulous.
Is the Chapel Ridge going to be taken care of? They have one remark here about the.
Yeah, that's an exterior.
Yeah, right.
There was some moss that was growing in the exterior of the tank that has been removed.
Any questions for Randy?
A couple.
Sure,
Just
go ahead.
on Pete was just touched on something like that polyvinyl chloride covering on the tank, that's something we hired on, I'm assuming?
That's the cathodic protection. That's that device that's inside the tank, basically, and that's replaced periodically. You see that come. Kirk brings it to the board as part of the tank maintenance.
Yeah, he's got a CIP request in for another one of those.
Yep. It's what it is it's a rod, a coated rod that goes down from the top of the tank into the water.
Chapel Ridge, that exterior issue, is that something taken care of by our guys, or is we have something we have to have?
No, we do that. That's just a pressure wash thing to take it off. But each of the tanks has cathodic protection, so each of them on a rotating schedule are replaced. They have a scheduled life, basically.
Then I had a question down in the distribution system recommendations where apparently we're not exercising valves and back flushing as often as we need to. Is that a staffing issue, or is that?
I think that's more of a scheduling issue, and so that will be amended in their process in doing it. It's the same thing we do throughout the water system. We exercise all the valves at the hydrants and everything else, and it's basically just to ensure that they're functioning properly and sealing.
It was one of the things Kirk mentioned, was it the last budget session, I think? Let's see, I remember it at the podium.
Yeah.
And he said that we should be doing this more often, and
Particularly at the ends of the water lines where you have a dead end, the sediment and everything tends to congregate at that area because it doesn't circulate as well, so you physically have to go in and pump that. And in fact, we're in the process right now. You've probably seen the trucks out on the roads. They're doing the televising of the system now to ensure that we don't have any blockages or issues internal within the system as opposed to the valves.
That's for wastewater, correct?
Say again?
Wastewater?
Yes, that was the wastewater, the sewer lines that they're doing that on currently, but we also do it on the water lines.
I guess my question is accomplishing that procedure, the exercising of the valves and all that, is that not being done because of a staffing issue, that we don't have enough people to physically get that done, or?
No, I think it's
Just
more
not
of
being
a,
scheduled.
I think it's more of a scheduling issue than a staffing issue.
And what about the certifications on, we have all our employees and it should be, are required right here, and this is what they are at right now? What are we training more? Do they have to go to classes or?
Yeah, the very last column on that page, the CEUs earned, that's their class, they have to earn CEUs to maintain their certification, and this is basically just a chart of showing that they've done that, what's required and where they're at in terms of earning it.
So is there something they do on the computer? I mean, or do they have to?
Oh, they go to class, they actually go to
Okay,
classes,
good.
and you see, we're through all of 18. This is targeting 19 requirements.
Right. Okay, that's good.
Yep, so they're all currently certified and up to date with their CEUs, and they're making progress towards their 19, 20, and 21 requirements.
Also on the fire department, the flushing, who does the Public Works do that, or does the fire department do the flushing of the hydrants?
Public Works generally does the
Okay.
flushing in combination or in concert with the fire department.
I didn't see anything in here about that, so I just,
No, that's not one of the things that this does. That's basically, that goes along with the,
Okay.
the
scheduling it.
the exercising the valves and the hydrants is usually done in conjunction with flushing.
Any other questions?
I think the CIP that he put together gives us some idea what's going to happen in the future now.
Let's get into that. What a segue. Well, we're not going to actually talk about it tonight. We want to do a work session on it, but it is there for you to start looking at.
So these reports generally, drive some of that, in terms of calculating what needs to be done when in the CIP, like the cathodic protection, those things wear out. I'm trying to think of what a good example would be. It's like the water filter on your refrigerator, it has a lifespan. You change them every 6 months generally. It's the same thing with the cathodic protection, depending upon the size of it. And the size of the tank, it varies, but they have a regular schedule to address those and to replace those.
If Kurt was here, I would like to ask him, maybe that we had some areas of low pressure, water pressure. Has that ever been taken care of, or is that something we're working on, or? I know
Well,
it's not
that's
an easy fix.
Yeah, it's a continuous issue, and, particularly, there are some areas, the further away from you get from the pumps, it's basically monitored by
Yeah,
valves.
streets and stuff like that.
It's by valving. For the most part, you have pressure reducing valves and pressure increasing valves to get it to it. But when you're getting near the end of a line, as I mentioned, the line's dead end, but they're not all looped, as
Right.
for instance here. On this end of Trowbridge, the lines basically end at the end, so they have to go in and they have to clean those out beyond the last fire hydrant. That's where if there is sediment, that's where the sediment congregates, and eventually it'll block a line, so they go in and clean those out, and that's.
When we were talking about the road, a couple of residents had said about the low pressure and stuff like that,
Mhm.
so.
Well, and there are some areas in our water system where the pressure is perceived to be low. It's not low with regard to the DEQ requirements and with the system working, but you may not be able to run 3 or 4 hoses at the same time, or have your in-ground sprinkling system going at the same time you're doing a load of laundry, those kinds of things. And, that's the kind of low-pressure issues that we run into. But the pressure within the building and the pressure within the line meets DEQ requirements or exceeds DEQ requirements. It's an inconvenience depending on where the location is, more than anything. And that's one of the things that we strive to do with, for instance, if this Ryan's Alley ever gets developed as a road, then we would loop all of these lines so you wouldn't have dead ends. And where we can, we loop those lines so they're continuous run lines. But we can't do that in all places.
Thank you.
Okay, so does everybody have their calendar that we could schedule a work session to talk about the CIP? And if we can do it during the day, it makes it easier for Kirk. The CIP's got more than just Public Works in it. In this case, there's at least one item from the planning department, but we'd like to just look at the Public Works side first. And I think by doing it this way, it'll streamline our budget work sessions and thin them out a little bit. Because if you remember, in the last few years, the biggest part of our budget work sessions is Public Works.
Mm-hmm.
So if we start, that's why I wanted to have all working document. If we, if we end up buying some kind of a CIP software, you know, it's expensive, it's around 10 grand in the future, or if we can access the, there's apparently some kind of a CIP in the asset management software.
There is.
So in a year or two, when that's all finished and done, we shouldn't have to do this. But that's why I put this spreadsheet together, so we have something to work with this year and next year. But it can change, so it's not, you know, if you don't like it, or if there's something missing, we can always change it. So, scheduling wise, I'm thinking an hour and a half at least, 2 hours. If we don't need it, we don't have to, but Randy, what's your schedule? Because you're the working one that we have to kind of work
Good
on.
day, and I'll let you know.
Okay. How soon?
Comments that I heard basically indicated that the last couple of work sessions you've had during the day with a fixed time frame seemed to work pretty well. I mean, I've heard that from other board members.
Like 2 to 4? Is that time a good time? I suppose it depends on the day. What do you think at the end of the month? Like 27th, 28th, 29th? Somewhere in there?
I won't be here.
Okay. I don't know John's schedule either. You want to look at the first week of September? We have a board meeting Tuesday. We could do it maybe Wednesday, Thursday, so it's like the 5th or 6th, from like 2 to 4. Does that work?
Labor Day is Monday.
1 to 3 would be nice.
Is that easier? Okay,
5th, I will not be able to in the afternoon.
okay.
School's in session too at that time, so.
So that's good, you're saying? Okay.
That's why 1 to 3 works better.
Oh, for you, yeah, that's true. How's the 6th? Does that work better?
It's okay with me on the 6th.
How's that? 1 to 3 on the 6th?
I'm at some planning training in Escanaba on the 5th, so the 6th would be better.
Yeah, and he said the 5th was bad too. So 1 to 3 on the 6th? Okay.
I'll move to schedule a work session on Thursday, September 6th, 2018, 1 to 3 p.m. here.
Or Public Works CIP. It'll give you a long time to look at that document.
So that's a motion.
Any
Support.
Okay. All in favor? Thank you.
Question.
Sure.
I've submitted several requests for information with respect to those CIPs, and I got response to none of them. I'm wondering if we have to wait until the work session, or if we can get responses before that.
How about if the manager and I work on that?
Where's the response going?
To everybody.
Everybody?
Go to everybody.
No, I mean, who'd you ask? I mean, did you just send an email or what?
Well, yeah, no, I actually sent to the manager, on to Kurt.
And then I have to hear about it, so I asked for it. It's about 5 pages.
That was the second one.
Oh,
There's another one.
okay. Well, if you're trying to have me help you do something with that, you need to give it
No.
to me.
No, I'm just asking if
Staff?
I submit those questions, do I have a reason to expect a response, or is that something that
You got
I can ask
questions,
all
you
day
get the
long.
answer.
Personally, I thought we'd talk about it during the work sessions rather than take up board time, or, you know, because if you're asking a question, everybody should know the answer too.
We'll know the answer.
Well, we can
It's not
certainly,
just- It's not just you getting answers, you know.
if the board wishes that information before the work session, certainly we provide that.
Exactly. Yes.
So I don't know if you were expecting them like the next day. They're very detailed questions.
They started out in June the 27th was my first 5-pager, and the last one was August the 8th. And I haven't been responded to with any of them.
Okay, I only saw the one. But I told Randy I figured we'd talk about them during this.
Well, I guess the problem I have is I might as well throw the rest of it out there. The problem I have is the documentation in the CIP request is woefully insufficient. And the problem I have is when you stand up at the podium and you verbally justify the CIP request, it's not documented anyplace. We need that kind of stuff documented. There's no reason you have to go over the same CIP request year after year after year when nothing has changed. If his justification was X 2 years ago, then it should be the same justification this year, unless you're going to amend it because it's changed. But the problem is the justification in there certainly doesn't answer all my questions. Doesn't even come close.
Well, I don't disagree with that. I don't know if we want to have a big discussion about it now, but some of the questions you've asked are, and I remember being asked the same question, how much do you trust your staff? There's a point where because he's doing specific required DEQ or state of Michigan procedures, policies, parts, I'm not saying carte blanche by any means, but some of your questions were pretty
I can
beyond
answer that
board
question
level.
very point blankly by saying that there was a point that you trust your staff until you can't get answers to questions, and then the trust kind of goes flittering out the window because I'm not getting answers to some very basic questions. And very basic question in my mind is if you're asking for a standby generator, and it seems that all standby generators are $100,000, how big is the standby generator? There's no justification as to what we're using a standby generator for, and the size is based on what we're supplying standby power to, and we just throw a $100,000 figure at it, and last year at the CIP discussions, we beat it to death about the life expectancy of the infrastructure in the ground, and it was a consensus of this board that it is not based on the depreciation schedule applied to those pipes. And we see the CIP request in there this year. It's got the same 50-year life expectancy based on depreciation schedule. And it was demonstrated last year that could be anywhere from 70 to 110 years. But this year's CIP request is still the same 50 years. And I'm wondering why that stuff is still in there. And we said we were going to let it go last year because we weren't approving any CIPs for 2018, and they'd be all spruced up and looking good in 2019. And we have the same bad information and inadequate information in this year's request. And those are the problems, to touch the surface of them, that I have with the CIP request.
I agree.
I would like to make a comment. If a board member asks for some information, I think he should get it, because when you're working on a CIP, we do it at home, and sometimes you like to be more prepared for a meeting. So there's no reason why he did not get those answers.
Well, I can say that when I submit a request for information, I don't submit it directly to Kurt, because that's not my job. My job is to submit my questions to you or to the manager and be forwarded to the department that they're supposed to be forwarded to. I have no business, in my opinion, walking in, taking up Kurt's time to get questions answered for me personally, but they should be answered eventually.
Then we have a breakdown then.
It's not a breakdown.
Well, he didn't go anywhere.
Well, like I said, I didn't find out about it until a little bit later, so
Well, it's
the
not the
manager
first
didn't
time
get
it's
it,
happened.
but-
You know,
Well,
it's
I
not-
believe it is the first time.
Well, I give you two things. One time, I give you one thing, it was nothing went anywhere. It didn't go anywhere. When I come and talk to you about it.
I passed it on to the person
Oh,
that
well,
was
it never went
responsible for
anywhere.
it. Well,
And I
then-
asked you if anything was done, you know.
Yeah, yes. You gave me 2 issues. I gave them both to the manager.
So I guess I'm suggesting
We're all
it's going
his
to be
boss,
it's going to be a
so-
contentious work session.
That's fine. The only thing I said to Kirk when I found out about, I believe it was the second round of 5 pages, and this is typed, small font, was that it was so detailed. I said, how long is it gonna take you to compile this? And he said, I can't do it right away. So I said, By the time I heard it, it was right before the CIP discussion on the planning level. And I said, just wait. Let's just see where this is gonna go before you start taking.
I will say the
lots of
expanded
staff time.
information I've asked for in those CIP requests was asked for a year ago. And they haven't shown up yet. And they certainly, nothing has changed because it's the same CIP request.
And it was kind of put together quickly when I finally threw the form at him and said, this is what you've got to use. So,
Well, and that goes back to the credibility of the person you're asking for again, because he knew these questions were coming a year ago.
and there should have been more backup. I agree. I don't disagree with you 100%. I don't. So, that's what I said. Manager and I will put something together and get it to you, to the board. Randy?
Oh, I was just gonna say the same thing. If it will assist the board, I'll get answers and get them to all the board members before the work session.
Well, that's the problem. I guess I hate to get all that stuff at the work session or have him stand up at the podium and answer those questions.
This is
Without
why
us
this
doing
is on the
research.
agenda, so we can work on it, okay?
Okay, I keep hearing that.
If you've got, no, this is what tonight is the night. This is why we're scheduling it. You gave us 10 pages of small typed questions that are very detailed. And again, when I heard about it, I didn't know how long it had been. It was right before the CIP. So I just told Kirk, I said, just wait until we get into, we're gonna be talking about this. I'm gonna put it on the agenda. And we'll find out how the easiest and cheapest is to get this information to you. I don't want him spending 2-3 days on engineering questions for a part that's state mandated. Are you hearing what I'm trying to say?
I'm hearing what you're saying there, and I agree with that. If it's mandated by the state, then document that it's been mandated by the state. But when you're asking for a standby generator that's $100,000, they're not $100,000.
Well, part of the problem with the generator was that there were 2 different generators that were in question. One was for the hall, whether it was going to include the fire department and public works, and one was him, it's on one of the pump
Center Street.
stations or something? Right. So there were 2 different ones. And as I mentioned in, I think, the last meeting, all of those items in the CIP now have been on there. If you remember the work session we had here, they've been on there, the same exact things for
For-
like 15 years.
They've been there for at least a
We've been
year that I
funding
know
them,
of.
And they're still not done. That
There's
was
still
my
no money
objection.
sitting there for them because they're
Right.
not funded because we keep taking the money.
Right, so part of this process is number 1, to have the document, number 2, to have a work session, we can get your questions answered, number 3, to get them structured with a separate account number. Remember, we talked about that at the work session. We've been doing a lot of other stuff, if you remember. This is the time we're gonna start doing this. It falls in line with policy governance. Takes a while to put this together.
Well, if I'm demonstrating a little frustration, that's because I'm very frustrated.
I agree. I am
Pretty hard to
too.
tell.
Can we move on?
I got one more question. At what point aren't you comfortable in going and asking? We're always told if you got questions, stop in and ask questions. Now you're telling me you didn't feel comfortable in doing that?
No, I didn't say I didn't feel comfortable doing it. I said I don't think I have any business communicating directly with the superintendent of public works. That should go through the person that he works for, and that's the manager.
Right.
That's policy governance 101.
And that is the preferred method.
And Township Government 101 too, because he's not our employee.
Would the board like me to provide and distribute those answers prior to next week? So you have time to take a look at it.
I'd like to see the
The
first
questions.
Oh,
The Dave's questions,
Oh.
if, you know.
Randy, I think I sent you the one on the 8th of August, which is pretty much a compilation of the other 2. And I think I've actually whittled it down to maybe 4 pages.
You did, and I did receive it.
If you wanted to send that one out to everybody, that would cover the other 2 earlier ones. that was just my frustration getting to the point that I needed to send it one more time.
I think we can provide answers in a fairly simplified manner that will address the questions, at least to the point of generating discussion at your work session.
That's what I'm looking for.
Great. Okay, Jason left. I think Andra put this consideration on about the CIP, thinking that we were going to make some kind of a decision on the first part, and it was just a meeting. I don't know that we need to consider it yet, do we?
Well, we're just seeing it now, so I don't think we can make a decision yet.
Yeah.
We should wait till after our work session.
And then get a formal recommendation from the.
I mean, I'm just seeing it now, so I'm not gonna make a decision tonight on it.
Right. I think this was kind of not really supposed to be on here, would be
Did
my,
the board get provided with the planning commission's recommendations and comments?
only through the minutes that I know of.
Just through the minutes.
Yeah. We're not talking about it yet. When we get into talking about it, I would think that's when we'd get the recommendation.
I would think everybody would get the recommendations early so they have a chance to read them before we talk about it.
Okay.
That would be good. So so this item on 9A should just really be put away until we make a decision. So it should be deferred to a future meeting.
But he's saying he wants the board to have that first.
That's fine, you can do that.
No, what I'm.
Is there a planning commission recommendation?
Yes, there is.
I can include that with my answer to the questions.
If you can't find it, I have a copy of it.
I haven't seen it, so, but I know someone who has.
Okay.
I'm presuming.
Yes, they come out of the planning commission meeting, it's either the last meeting in June or the first meeting in July that the recommendation come out. I think it was the first meeting in July.
All right. 9C is discuss Library Township Advisory Council. I did provide you, if I'm not mistaken, some information. And I do have, did you get the job descriptions and stuff, right? David asked for that.
Yes.
There's two there. I just ran these off, otherwise I'd have given them to you sooner. I think I have them all. And I guess we'll save one for John. Put his name on it. This is 22 pages of a 68-page packet. I have the full packet. And I want to know what you want to see of this, if anything. There's.
Of what?
Of the public library packet for the board, their board meeting every month.
I would like to see just the minutes. We don't need the packet. We have no control over them.
Well, there's a lot of financial stuff in here too. So what I copied is just, I kind of just guessed what you might want to look at, if anything.
But we're not responsible for them.
No, but so much of the discussion was, we're giving them all this money, and we don't know what they're doing with it. So I'm trying to provide you with information so that you can answer the public or have whatever information you want of where our $125,000 is going
But
every
that,
year.
Lynn, that's, the residents voted on it. We have no control over it. Do we want the same thing from the county commissioners? Do we want the same thing from the road commission, stuff like that? I think it's overbearing here. In here, we're talking about, now that we know, we had this before, several years ago, all the definition of it and stuff like that. I thought the last remarks that the board had, that we just want to get the minutes. They have a pamphlet they send out, what's going on in the library, and it just, like down here, about, I was going to come in with a hatchet. I told them that were concerned that I was coming with a hatchet to dissolve the committee. Well, that's kind of crazy, you know. That wasn't the intent of it. We just wanted some reporting coming back. The minutes of their meeting would be fine, just like we get minutes of other meetings. But I don't think we should go whole hog in there. Now we're talking about have them attend our meetings and, you know, let's not get carried away with this thing. I think the basic interest in our board is to have minutes so we can see what's going on there. But we don't have to have their packet. We don't have to do all the other stuff unless, if you want to do more research, you can do that. You can get that information. But as a board member, I'd like to see their minutes. I get their packet, I get their brochure at home, I get this at home. It tells what's going on in the library. And if I don't like it, I can't do nothing about it anyways because we have no say-so in their matter.
Okay,
Let's
Dave?
not get carried away with this thing.
I guess my intention when we started down this whole trail was that if we could get the TAC representative from the township to submit a monthly summary of, not the whole thing, those things that affect this township in their opinion. And if we have more questions, we can ask more questions. But as of right now, we get 0. If we could just get a summary of the way the meeting went and those things that involve Marquette Township.
They rotate the TAC participation at the library board meetings, so our representative would not go every month.
How often do
She's
they
not
go?
required to,
Right. How often do they go?
like whenever, because we have 2 representatives actually. And I don't know whether they rotate them out because all the townships don't go. They all go to their TAC meeting. And then the board meeting, and the TAC meeting is only quarterly. So they don't get information or updates or anything except for quarterly. They may get the packets, I'm guessing, but they don't meet or discuss or do
I'm
anything
curious
with
how
the board.
often our representatives attend the library board meetings.
They're not required to, so I don't know if that's up to them, if they attend or not,
Not required to by the,
by the library board.
I would imagine they get the minutes, Dave.
I'm thinking that everybody gets the packets.
I'm wondering why they don't attend them on a regular basis.
Part of it is because in our discussion at this last meeting that I had with the 2 ladies, they didn't know what they're required to do. And I said, that's why I'd like to have you come and we can have a conversation.
I
And she
guess,
said, well, I wouldn't propose to answer any questions. So, and I asked
my
Amber, I
question
said,
would,
then what purpose does she serve?
my question would be then is it, could this board not ask that they attend those meetings monthly
I would think so.
and supply a report back to something that the rest of the committees are doing?
Yep.
Just a summary of what happened of those things that affect the township. And they don't even have to come here to see us. They could just submit it so it could go in with the packet once a month.
Seems
And
too
we can
easy.
we can work it out all after that. I mean, if we're getting good information from them, then everybody's happy, great. If what we're getting is nothing, then we need to fine tune it, but we don't know what we're gonna get because we never got it.
That's why I'm trying to
So
get this
that would be my
established.
question is, can we ask them to attend those meetings on a regular basis, monthly basis, and supply a summary report of what happened? I mean, we don't care how they spend every dime because there's nothing you can do about it anyway, Pete's right. But we should be brought up to speed on things, policies that are gonna change in the library that's gonna affect the township, or some events that they're gonna have going on in the upcoming month that the township should be made aware of. Those kind of things is what we should get in that summary.
Okay.
Do you have a copy of this, Lynn? What each member, the Township Advisory Council,
Does who have a copy?
did our members have it? A copy of that?
Our 2 members?
Yeah.
Yeah, they just got it a couple months ago,
Okay.
the way I understand it. And that was part of the problem when I started talking to Andrea. She said, well, I don't think they know what they're supposed to do. They go to the TAC meetings, that's all they do, and then they rotate out at the library meeting. I'm talking about all of the townships that are part of it. And in one case, they appointed, and I said, Scandia's representative to the TAC is a Scandia board member. And they chose to do that. The board member asked to be the TAC, or the TAC ended up getting elected. I don't know which came first.
Oh, from my perspective, I'd like the board to direct them to attend the board meetings and provide a summary report of what went on that is affecting the township, and see where it goes from there. We either like it or we don't like it.
There are two board members, and they meet once a month, so they could rotate all the way down the line, and they'd be done with it, Randy.
Yeah, Randy had, well, you had your hand up. No? Okay. Randy?
No, I was just going to say, we have a template in the office. The former TAC representative attended every board meeting, brought back a copy of the agenda and a summary of what was discussed at the library board meeting, and put it in a binder at the front desk, and then it also attended the TAC meeting to represent the township's interests at the TAC meeting, which is what I thought the position was all about. But that was your former appointees. That's how they addressed it.
I think we should probably go back to that format and see how it works out.
I don't know why this is so hard.
Have you seen any of this? Have you ever seen one of this? No, okay.
Okay, so I will do that. Thank you. But I did print the whole thing. You asked for information, so if you want to throw it away, that's totally fine. I'm going to keep the whole packet just because they always send it to me anyway.
Just want to have proof.
Will we have a 3-ring binder somewhere with all this information, so we don't have to continue building it at a house too? So I just.
Well, yeah, there is one at the front desk. There's one that was being utilized at the front desk.
Of what, though? It's nothing current.
Well, no, the current ones haven't been doing that, so it was from the former.
Okay.
But we still have it at the, it's old information, but the format is there.
That's the
So
one
do
from
you
John?
want, pardon me?
Is that the one from John?
Yes.
Do you want me to,
I currently have it at home.
should we put it in a packet, or do you want to just get it in your mailbox?
Well, he just,
No, I mean, or now, because Ernie is asking
Oh.
just to have it in one place, so I didn't know if everybody wanted these minutes,
Just someplace you can go find them.
Okay.
Fine with me.
so you don't need to have them emailed, or?
no, that was what was happening in the past, is that after the meeting, they'd be put into the binder. Andrew would put it in the binder, and the binder was just there for whoever wanted to come and review it.
Okay.
From my
Andy?
perspective, that's fine.
The way it's currently being done is I get minutes of the TAC meeting, the agenda of the TAC meeting from our representative, and it's usually in the board packet quarterly. So that's where it's at now. So if you want to review the old TAC minutes, they're in the board packets quarterly.
They typically just talk about
Excuse me.
It's the
what's going
TAC.
on in the library,
Just
though.
the TAC
They
meeting.
don't do the administrative part of it.
No.
Okay, thank you. I will take care of that. Any committee updates?
Oh, yes.
Roads or rec?
Very many. I would propose a change to the way these reports are done. I would propose that the planning commission obviously would come every board meeting, a summary of that, but the road committee and the rec committee would come in every other month, because we keep rehashing the same thing on the second board meeting that we did the meeting before, so.
I'm just asking for committee updates.
I know.
You can kind of give what you want, what you have.
The planning commission, there was two special use permit hearings last Wednesday, and one was for 2352 and 2362 Werner Street for use as a short-term rental. And that property owner on that, or the applicant on that, was Matt Blondo. That was approved at the planning commission for a special use permit pending completion of the required fire inspection. However, After the meeting, it was noted that one of the notifications to one of the property owners within 300 feet did not get sent out. So we are having a special meeting on September the 10th and another public hearing on that piece of property to make sure that we've got everybody notified that should have been notified. The second public hearing was on 250 Partridge Bay Trail. The applicant's the Ray Family LLC, and that special use permit was approved after the public hearing with the pending completion of the same required fire inspection. There's also, since the Planning Commission meeting, there's been an issue arise with the Old Carpet Specialist Building, and it would just happened to cross by the planning or the zoning administrator that they're opening a Halloween superstore in there, but they have not applied for the proper permits to do so. So he had some discussions with them, and we're going to include their special use permit request in the September 10th meeting, along with the rehearing of the Werner Street. And because of a retail operation adjacent to a rural residential property, requires not a special use permit, but a public hearing before he can issue a permit or a license. So we're going to have that on the 10th to make sure we've got that taken care of. She wasn't very happy, the owner, but that's the zoning ordinance. And that was it.
They got the big signs up already.
They were going to open Saturday.
It's interesting because the building owner knows that requirement for permits and licenses. We've had a number of discussions with the owner.
Yeah, and I guess the other issue was I think the northern land brokers are the ones that set the whole lease up, and they never informed or never checked with anybody at the township here about what was required. They just leased them the building. So I'm sure if the zoning administrator hadn't been driving by and wondering what was going on, they'd just been open Saturday, and we'd just, oh well.
Any other questions for Dave? And we don't have any committee appointments. Consider the manager's evaluation. Why don't you take that, Randy?
All right, as last year, I compiled it. In your packet, it's actually the last page. It got out of order for some reason. It should be before the manager's report. And Andrea, I think, forgot to switch those, but regardless, it's there. I compiled it. The manager scored almost the same as last year. I think it was 3.31 last year, 3.29 this year, which is above a good performance. And he has copies of the evaluations, and I will turn it over to him if he's got any comments.
Not really a lot of comments, just thank you for another successful year. Clerk Rotary gave me the compilation. It is 3.29 out of a possible 4 point on the schedule. I think we've made continuing to make progress, just as we have for the full 16 years that I've been here, going on 17. And it looks like we're going to have another continuing growth year for 2019. All indications are. We have a very good working relationship, and I appreciate that. I thank you for the continuing confidence.
Thanks, Randy. If anybody wants to see those, you're welcome to them. I can.
Yeah,
them to you.
Supervisor Durant has the originals, and they are available for any board member to look at if so desired.
It seems like there might have been a little misunderstanding how to use the forms. A couple of us have used them for quite a while, but when you put anything exceptional or below exceptional, and you make a comment, or I should say, put a check mark, you're supposed to explain or give an example. Instead of just saying, exceptional performance or needs improvement, you need to say, give an instance. And the other confusing part is it only applies to this year, from September last year or August, the end of August to September. It doesn't apply to anything before that. Each year is separate. So it's kind of got confusing. I'll remind you again next year.
You have those in your office?
Yep. Just let me know.
And also, we'll do it the same time next year. I'll get it out to you early in August, end of July, or early July, to be submitted around August 1st, to be submitted to the manager by the second meeting in August.
Okay. And we don't have any public. Any announcements from the board? Chair? I'm going to be a grandma again. That's kind of an announcement.
Congratulations.
Yeah, I'm excited.
You were the mother who would graduate. Congratulations.
Oh, I've gotten lots of congratulations,
Oh, I thought you
actually.
said a baby.
So apparently you do congratulate grandparents. Manager's report.
You do have a printed report, although it is brief. We've been busy with a lot of things, primarily getting through the budget process. Reminding the public and the board members that as of Tuesday, the 4th of September, we are back to our regular hours, 8 to 5 in the office. We will not be closing at 4:30. So that will be right after the Labor Day holiday, starting September 4th. We had a very successful Community Day event on August the 4th. I want to publicly thank the fire department for their participation and the building and ground staff for their attendance at the event and being available to deal with whatever occurred. We had good turnout. I think the entertainment was outstanding. The food was really good. Super One did a fantastic job. The Community Events Committee met Monday, yesterday, as a matter of fact. We are already about 2/3 of the way through getting ready for next year. We've lined up much of the entertainment, the vendors, and they had a great time. They actually volunteered to come back next year. The one thing that we did have difficulty with is we had a little breakdown in the food situation. It was supposed to be there till 10 o'clock, but we had an unforeseen circumstance occur with the second one who had to leave a little early. So Super One has stepped up and said that they will be there for the full tour next year. So thankful for that. But again, a very good event. We had a great time. We're in our budget process. The first one that was actually completed was the fire department, which we have to do for the special assessment public hearing, so Dulcie can submit whatever it is the board is going to be allocating. This year it's the 2.5 mils again for 2019, which is the standard. So you'll be seeing that budget along with the other budgets will be in your hands by the close of the day, Sunday on September 2nd. Hopefully it'll be the Friday before, but it might be over the weekend. I might have to wrap a couple of things up and get it to you, but by regulation, we need to have it in your hands by the September 2nd. It has to be completed and adopted not later than December 31st. We have it scheduled right now to be on your December 18th board meeting for the budget hearing. You have yet to schedule work sessions. I do believe your work sessions are going to be very similar to last year. I think we'll be spending probably a little bit less time on the public works. I don't believe there's going to be any serious increases. If you saw the water report, the water usage report in your packet this time, you'll see that in the month of July we tripled our volume of water sold simply because it was a dry month. And you can see that pattern. You can see that in May, June, and July there was an increasing volume. I think it was a 33% increase in May, 44 or 45% increase in June, and a 169% increase in volume sales in July, simply because of the climate that we had. A lot of people were watering, a lot of people were using pools, a lot of people were consuming water. So that figures into the calculation of the rates for 2019, and it might be an excellent time for the board to again have discussion during the work sessions about setting a base floor for 2 or 3 or more years before you look at changing rates again to see what that fluctuation is year to year. So, you know, we are a little bit at the mercy of the weather. If we have a wet season, we don't sell much water. If it's a dry season like this year, our water volume is high. So rather than chasing rates up and down, up and down, up and down every year, you might want to set a base rate for 2 years or 3 years or however. But it might be a subject of discussion at this budget work session. The budgets, other than that I'm working on right now from your general fund departments are pretty much static to what they were last year. We won't know some of the critical data. For instance, we won't know the health insurance rates until probably October. We have a calculation that we're utilizing currently to project what those rates might be, but it'll be October before we have a final rate. So the late part of the year, we may be making some budget adjustments again. But other than that, we're not seeing tremendous changes in the budgets, holding them pretty much on the line. I mentioned to Supervisor Durant today that right now at the end, if everything goes for the second half of 2018 as it has for the first half and on our predictions, that we should be adding a small amount back to our general fund balance. We're still about 24% short of what your target was. We're about $166,000 short of where we should be at this point. We're recovering slowly from the dark stores payouts that we had to do out of the general fund balance, but we're not there yet. So hopefully we'll be able to put a little bit more in 2018 at the end of the year, and it looks like right now 2019 might be shaping up to be a fairly decent year with growth. That hopefully by budget time 2019, December 31st is tax day, we may be in pretty good shape for 2020 with revenue. So hopefully making up a little bit of ground there by growth as opposed to recovering any lost taxes. So other than that, I didn't have anything else that I wanted to pass along to you this evening, unless you have any questions.
Pete?
When do our contract with the city come up again? How many, 2 years for the water?
The rates, we will be calculating water rates again next year. It's a 3-year. Basically, we have an outside firm that comes in and does
Right.
a calculation of the costs and everything along those lines, depreciation, and they then set the rate for the next 3 years, basically. So that will be next year. They'll be doing that.
Thank you.
Randy, last meeting, Pete was talking about my supervisor's report, and he was mentioning about the solid waste. I compare that solid waste meeting minutes down a little bit, but he was asking about that I give more information about the township. I'm thinking that would be your job. I'm not sure what he's looking for, that's why I wanted to ask him, but
You're talking,
my report is just stuff that I'm working
you're
on.
talking wastewater or
Well,
the
just
garbage?
everything, I guess.
Solid
'cause he
Waste
said that
Authority.
The solid waste report could be a separate report rather than part of my supervisor's report. So if there was gonna be township goings-on, that would be kind of part of your manager's report, I'm thinking, or? I'm not sure, Pete, I'm not sure what you were
Well, I just,
asking for.
you know, supervisor report, what, you know.
That's just what I'm doing.
Right, exactly, but you're not working nothing for the town, you're not working on anything for the township. According to your report, because it was all about the solid waste, that's what I was trying to get through. The only report that you have is from what was done at that meeting. Now, this week here, it says supervisor's report, none. And I just thought maybe you could help us with what's going on in the township, because apparently we can't go in and talk to our department heads. And, you know, I just like to know what's going on as far as planning and that. I try to attend as many meetings as I can, planning and all the other ones, but, you know, just what's going on. It just seems there's a void there, and I don't know exactly. I'll have to come up with a better answer for you.
Yeah, feel free, but I guess I don't know what you're looking for. So I thought maybe from the manager's perspective, there was something in the township. I haven't
I'll
been
get back
involved
to you.
with anything in the last couple of weeks, so I didn't have anything to share. Does everybody still want the solid waste notes? Or do you care?
Well, I get them, you know, you give them to us, I read them.
I just want to make sure.
Yeah.
I'm trying to provide information. If it's not in the right format or whatever, just let me know, because I don't want to do it if I don't have to.
Well, you think we get the minutes from the Solid Waste Authority are in the packets.
It's a huge packet again.
Yeah.
That's why I'm trying to condense just what we talked about.
But the minutes, do we get the minutes? And, you know, we can read the minutes from the meetings.
If that's what you want, that's fine.
Okay, well, I
Type
think what
something else up.
you were doing is if you're having discussions with other participants that aren't part of that, is what I thought you were trying to put in your,
I'm trying to
Supervisor's
do
report.
whatever.
but not the minutes per se.
No, I'm trying to give a compilation of the discussion.
Oh, okay.
You know, what, yeah, I can give you the minutes. It's about a 25-page packet again, if you want. Yeah,
I had it a couple of times, but I didn't think it was 25 pages.
Well, the whole packet is, but I think if you're talking about the minutes is smaller than that. That's a piece of the
2 or
packet.
3 pages.
Yeah.
Okay, that's all I had. Anything else for the manager? Okay, Randy, we're going to review motions.
Okay, first motion was consent agenda as presented, approved. Second motion was approval of the agenda as presented, that was approved. No motion, or no action items with both of those. Third motion was the special assessment 2019 levy of 2.5 mils for the fire department, and that was approved. That'll be in the minutes, and then I'm sure the assessor will make that form out for us.
Yeah, you will be seeing that form come back with all of the taxes. It'll be included on this tax form that goes to the clerk, to the county.
Yep, so we'll see that, I think, as in September, Randy, or no, October, somewhere in there. I remember it last year, it has all those on there. But anyway, fourth motion was to schedule a work session for the CIP on Thursday, September 6th, 1 to 3. Clerk will post that tomorrow. And that's about it. Action items was the CIP recommendation for the planning to get that information to the board. And that'll be deferred to a future meeting, that recommendation after the work session. And that's it.
Any board member comment?
I received this letter, and if you can get a shot of this, I'd like to know. Can you see that back there? Yes. Okay. This is sent to my house, and I'd like to, the person who sent it, I'd really like to talk to this person, because it's from Baltimore, 2000, I think, what let's say?
Wall Street Journal.
Yeah, Wall Street Journal, June 20th, 2018. It's a Wall Street Journal article about utility workers. And I know what he's trying to say, but I don't think he's justified in painting all our utility people with one brush as other areas. If somebody's not doing their job, it's not fair to say that our people. We have a very small staff, and I think they do a great job. They're very talented and experienced, and I think they do a pretty good job. So if they have a problem, I'd like to talk to this person, and they can call me up, text me, whatever. You just have to call the office here and they get the information, but I'd really like to sit down and talk to this gentleman, whoever, gentleman or lady or whoever, so thank you.
Andy?
Just a reminder to the residents and to the board that school will be in session at Northern, will be in next week. Next Monday they'll be starting. And then 2 weeks after Labor Day, the public schools will be. So make sure you watch out for the kids in the morning and increased traffic that will be happening here in another week, so. And what else did I have to say? Elections, and this is especially for any students coming in, because you'll still have time. If you need to change your residency if you want to vote here within 60 days of the November election. I think that's correct, Roger, 60 days, I believe. But anyway, make sure you do that. Come into our office and do that. I talked to a gentleman today about that, and I said, he said, well, can I do it at the Department of Motor Vehicles? And I said, you can do it there, but sometimes it takes a while to catch up, and I don't want you to not be able to vote here because it took them a long time to get it moved over. So I said, just come in the office and change it here, and it's a lot quicker and more efficient. And we did take care of, my assistant Lois did go through some of the outlying areas to make sure that we don't have any upset residents that are paying taxes to Marquette Township and have to vote in Ishpeming Township. So hopefully that'll take care of that problem.
Any other comments? One more motion?
Move to adjourn.
Support.
All in favor?
Aye.
Fair and
All
fair.
opposed?
So this guy-
Guess we're in favor. 8:43.